to The Truth in This Art. I am your host, Rob Lee, and I am excited to welcome my next guest, a creative artist from Brooklyn, New York, who has been a musician and a photographer for many years and is now based in Baltimore. He uses photography, video, and production to tell people's stories through images and is committed to representing them well through his compositions. His studio, Naked Humans, is located in the historic Mount Vernon area of Baltimore. Please welcome Sam from Naked Humans.
Well, thank you for having me.
So, welcoming you on, and I saw you in person. This is one of those rare things where I didn't meet you online first, and then it's like, hey, you want to be on my podcast? And then, hey, let's get coffee or a beer later. It's kind of the flip. It's like you saw me on stage being nervous and having all types of like under boob sweat and underarm sweat on stage at this at the Creative Mornings Baltimore thing a couple of months ago, and so we're here now. We're here. This is kind of how that's supposed to work, I think.
Yeah. It used to be the way things worked back in the day.
What is it, 2019?
Right.
So again, thank you for joining the podcast. And before we get too deep and embedded into the conversation, could you share with us your story? Like, how did you first become interested in photography? And I've read that originally you were a musician. But people always are the things that they are, right? But you started off in music, and ultimately, how did that shift happen to photography? I know it's a lot to unpack there, but if you will.
Yeah. So my name is Sam. I'm almost 40 years old, which is really weird to say. But I've been around for quite some time. First love in the medium of communications and then the medium of storytelling was music. I very early on knew that I very much wanted to be a musician. And I got picked up by like major label headhunters to be a session drummer for Universal and Sony. And I would be a session drummer for whoever showed up into the studio. They needed to scratch tracks. They needed to figure things out. I would be like the Swiss Army knife of different stuff. So if it was jazz, it was jazz that day. If it was pop, it was pop that day. If it was country, it would be country that day. So a lot of people came in through the studio. I made a lot of quick friends, like people that I never thought I would like rub shoulders with. Like Herbie Hancock came in one day and wanted to do a scratch track. Katy Perry, when she wasn't Katy Perry, when it was Katie Hudson, came in, did a scratch track. It was probably the glory years, and I didn't even know they were the glory years back then, because I would be like doing my homework for high school while I was having to do that, and then fax it in when faxing was a thing. Yeah. So I then when I used to live in New York, they were filming John Wick. Nice. Near where I lived, and I was just like very curious, like looking around, seeing what was happening. They had like the fake name of the movie that they were filming because they want to keep it under wraps. And I saw a friend that I had seen at a concert venue that usually did sound. He was running the sound for the movie. Yeah. Like, oh, hey, hi, what you doing? He's like, oh, nothing. Blah, blah, blah. I'm on my day off. Like, I'm on my day off. He's working. He's like, they actually need a couple hands. And I know like at least how to throw a cable. Yeah. Like, I'm in. Like, what's up? And that's how I kind of got into the production element and started falling in love inadvertently at storytelling from a camera's perspective, a filmmaking perspective. And that's when I started getting curious about filmmaking and getting curious about cameras and all this other stuff. And I started borrowing cameras from friends that had cameras, and I couldn't afford it on a musician's salary. So I would take out their cameras while they weren't using it, shoot photos, shoot interviews, shoot whatever I could shoot in the little bit of time that I had the camera with me. And slowly but surely got my own camera. But music was always the main thing. Yeah. Music was always the main thing until I moved to Maryland. When I moved to Baltimore, Maryland, I actually moved here to be the creative director of a small business. And then I started shooting on the side and started realizing that I could make a lot more money shooting on the side than I was being someone's employee. And I was like, okay, maybe I can do this.
Yeah.
Maybe I can do this. And I started shooting on the side, like literally just about anything, commercial work, product photography, portraits, seniors, weddings, like everything. And then I realized that there was this niche thing that I did not know anything about. They
Mhm.
were like, hey, can you take my boudoir photos? I was like, what? And they were like, yeah. And I was like, I don't, it's not computing. And they're like, can you take my nudes? I was like, I guess. Yeah, sure. And then that snowballed
Yeah.
into what Naked Humans has become now. And it's been such a roller coaster ride of a learning and unlearning and
Mhm.
relearning a lot of things. And I know it's therapeutic for a lot of my clients. A lot of my clients have a ton of stories, which now I actually interview and record because I believe in the power of storytelling.
Yeah.
But man, I did not expect to be the person learning.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
oftentimes in the service industry, you're giving, but my clients give me so much more in regards to value, the human condition, learning about things,
Yeah.
because everybody comes from so many different walks of life. But that's the short answer to
No, I dig it. I dig it, and
the
it kind of
origin story.
it kind of teases some of the things I'm going to pepper back in as we go along. And I'll be remiss if I didn't mention I'm close to 40 as well, and that's why I was like, oof. I'll be like we're recording this in January. I'll be 38 in 2 weeks. I'm like, look, it's like, come on. I say it's got to be something different, bro. I'm literally saying it to myself in the mirror when I get up sometimes.
Yep.
But yeah, and I like being able to kind of hear that story. And I feel the same way. I joke with people on occasion, especially doing these interviews, that I'm just stealing. Like, you guys think this is an interview. I'm just stealing from you guys to make myself seem more interesting. That's really what it is. It's just me. It's nothing philanthropic about it. It's just me. It's gentleman theft.
Yep. Yep.
That's what I'm gonna start giving myself, Rob Lee, the gentleman thief. So in talking about some of that sort of inspiration to go into photography early on, like, how has it evolved? Like, over like the last 20 years, moving from doing this as a sort of a side, project, side hustle, area of interest, to like a business. And, you mentioned some of the gear you were able to get access to. What are you using now?
So, my very, very first camera was a Nikon D90. For those camera nerds, it was the first camera that you could record HD on, not high quality HD. This was for 720. This is 720p. It was the first entry level camera that you can get that would record that. And I always got cameras that could do both hybrid photo and video.
Sure.
And then once I felt like there was a cap at what I could do, that the camera could not do, I started looking into other cameras and other systems and moving into the Canon realm.
Yeah.
And I got the Canon 5D Mark II, which basically in our space, in the camera space, changed everything. It changed filmmaking, movies, like House, the show House.
Yeah.
Was recorded on the 5D Mark II. Blockbuster movies were recorded on the 5D Mark II. So I was just like, all right, this is where we're going. And they had like software that you could download it so you can unlock it. It would basically fry the camera if you overused it. But people were using this camera for everything. And now, as soon as Sony released their first mirrorless system back in 2012, 13. I don't know. I don't remember, but I remember being an early adopter and I was in. I sold everything else, and I dealt with all the headaches that the first generation of Sony's kind of dealt with. And I've been with Sony ever since.
I know nothing about that term mirrorless. So if you will, could you, like, for layperson, if you will, what does mirrorless mean?
So traditional camera work, outside of medium format, which is like, you threw the cloak on top and hit the thing and then the large spoke of flash went off. When the traditional camera was made, it was made with a mirror inside. So what this mirror would do, so that the film on the other side wouldn't overexpose, you would compose the image.
Yeah.
the mirror would then flip once you hit the shutter button, and that image would then come on and expose onto the film.
Oh, okay.
What technology has allowed us to do now most manufacturers are going mirrorless, is that they take the mirror out. And this allows for a lot of different things. Light is more sensitive, so it has immediate exposure from the lens straight to the sensor. This also allows for cameras to be smaller because you no longer need this mechanical thing to flip over. So now most manufacturers, Sony were the first ones in to make mirrorless cameras.
Well, thank you for it, because I've been hearing that a couple of times in interviews I've done this week, and I'm like, it just didn't really impress upon me, because that's like the visual is not necessarily my space. If someone's like, yeah, man, they have this lossless audio, that's my lane. Like, oh yeah, and definitely
32-bit flow, baby.
Right. And as I think I have, and this is not really related, but it is talking about gear. I try to get my gear as small as possible. So I have this PodTrack Pro, and I've had conversations with Zoom US, Zoom Corp, or what have you. And I have like 4 lavalier mics with me that all can fit in a fanny pack. And I was like, yo, I've gone from having this, I'm still using my Behringer mixer, this thing that takes up half of my desk, but moving to like, what's my mobile setup? Oh, I got these headphones. I got this smaller mixer, but it's still a mixer. And that's in a backpack. Now it's like my gear's in a fanny pack, and I connect earbuds through Bluetooth if I need to check the sound audio. And it's like, it's just remarkable, like how small it gets. And you mentioned the cloak like earlier. I was hoping you were talking about like a cloak that one can throw over themselves. I was recently at the Meyerhoff, and it's like, we have a cloak room. I was like, I don't know if I belong here. I was like, I don't think I have I was like, cloak room. I mean, that is a goal for me, though. In 2023, noted podcaster Rob Lee is only going to wear cloaks to events.
You're going to be the Count Rob Lee.
And I mean, shout out to the waffle texture on the sweater there, sir.
I'm trying.
I mean, I just got a dirty Carhartt hoodie on. It's that life. I'm always working on myself. So, you mentioned it earlier, Naked Humans. So tell us about Naked Humans. How did it come about? And like, mission? Because it feels like whenever there's a brand, whenever there's a business or a thing, there's some sort of mission that's attached. So talk about that, if you will. And I have several bullet points other there, but I at least want to start there.
Yeah, Naked Humans actually started because of COVID. It was so prior to COVID, it was heavily fashion, glamour. I really wasn't focused so much on boudoir. It wasn't like my main industry to go to. But during COVID, like everybody else, everybody slowed down.
Yeah.
And got to self-reflect, got to do a bunch of things. And when Zoom became a thing and it was going through its beta phases or whatever, we jumped on and tried to see, make sure that people were all right. Yeah. Here's a link. Everybody come in. Let's connect. You're still alive. You're good. You need anything? We'll drop off some stuff, whatever, just something to do other than watch another episode of Tiger King. Right.
Nice. Yeah.
We had these parties, and now I would see these colleagues that I used to work in, and in the commercial world is very much a revolving door. Like you hear stories of eating disorders and like body dysmorphia and all these other things, but it's never in front of your face. Like you're just trying to sell this garment, trying to sell this jewelry, trying to sell this thing. You take the picture, it goes to editing, ends up on an ad, whatever. You're not sitting there having a therapy session with people. Mm-hmm. But eventually these Zoom spaces became therapeutic for a lot of these people that I now call my friends. Yeah. And they started opening up about this stuff. And now I can no longer turn a blind eye. Now I could no longer not pay attention to it. And I felt like disgusted with myself because I felt like I was part of the problem and I was feeding the monster of this over edited, over processed, over glamorized Instagram reel, if you will, of life and the highlights and making skin look like not skin, but this what we now consider is normal skin, but it's not. It's very digitized, highly processed stuff. And I was like, I don't think I want to go back to work. I don't think I want to do this anymore. And my girl was just like, why don't you just do it your way? And the timing of the phrase, the timing of the conversations, all got in there into Naked Humans.
Mm.
And I got a couple of my regular ass friends. We went outside. This is still lockdown, guys. This is still, you can't shoot indoors. So like we're like, just keep walking. Like, and they're like, I'm shouting poses and things from a distance. And they're like, do we just get naked here? I was like, yeah, there's nobody here. And we took these pictures and I started putting them up online. And when I kid you not, Rob, like I was scared because this is like, if I don't shoot, I don't eat. So like, if this isn't well received, will I have a contract again? Will anybody ever want to work with me? Will like all these things are there. Their actual fears. And then the feedback comes in from comments to DMs to actual emails to bookings. Now the inquiry shifted from, hey, I'd like some photos, to a story.
Yeah.
I've gone through these things in my life and I need to be on top of my mountain now. Seeing myself represented in your feed has given me the courage to book with you. And I want to see myself the same way that person saw themselves. And it shifted and it became so affirming to me that I was like, this is it. This is what I have to do. And during lockdown, I pulled the trigger on the lease. When we weren't allowed to have people in, I was just like, we're going to build it and they're going to come.
Right.
And it's been incredible. It's been such an incredible, humble ride, man. Like the sheer background from where I come from a very religious, hyper religious background where they say that our bodies are temples, but we're made as young kids to believe that our bodies are weapons. And then seeing everything and everyone kind of be the champion in their own stories by way of Naked Humans has been such a sigh of relief and such a breath of fresh air. So that's a little bit of that.
No, thank you. That's great. I mean, I made an effort last year. I'm not. I do this, right? I'm not the person that's going to say I'm doing this for this reason. If you get it, you get it. If you don't, you don't. And I had this week of interviews. Had one with the homie Martinez Evans and Artemisa. And I know I'm messing their names up because I'm always messing names up, but I had both of them on, and they both have been in this realm of changing how people view sort of like bodies. So Martinez is 300 pounds and running, and he's a fat marathoner. He's like over 300 pounds and he runs marathons. And he was in this photo shoot and he was like, yo, I'm naked in this joint. Like I'm just out there, just showing myself and showing his body and normalizing it in a way with all of the quote unquote imperfections. And one of the points you made earlier, when I see like images, I'm like, yo, there is some, why does anyone want a wax figure? Like, what is happening? And I have terrible skin. Well, not terrible, because I have imperfect skin. And I was like, I can't relate to that. Or if I see a person walking around, I was like, you made out of plastic? Who are you? Are you Barbie? What is this? And I want something that's normal. Or even those instances with Black and brown folks, why are you changing? Why are they lighter? What is going on here? Or it's not properly lit, because that's a conversation that's come up recently too in the last few years, especially. I think a lot of credit goes to the folks with Insecure properly lighting Black people.
Yep.
Because it's like, look, I mean, you got multiple shades. Like, it's not just these very extreme ends. It's some variance there, and with Artisma, she's a plus size model. Falling into that lane and what have you, and just saying, look, I wanted to model, I wanted to give that a shot, and being very self-aware of it. And I was like, intentionally, I want to do this. I want to put these out, and I put them out back to back for that purpose, because, there's so many different stigmas that float around, and you see these different comments because everyone is kind of a jerk on social media or has the capacity to be one. And it's odd. And I always look at ESPN Body Issue, which is not happening anymore, but I always would look at that. And I'm like, all right, Prince Fielder's on there. I was like, all right, I'm gonna take my shirt off now. Cool, we good. Or Vince Wilfork. All right, cool. We're gonna take my shirt off. We out here, my guy. So speak a bit more on some of the body positivity angles, like in terms of some of the storytelling that goes on there, because we all have stories. I was sharing one earlier with, you go to a doctor's thing, you go to a doctor's appointment. It's like, you're overweight, bop, bop, bop. It's like, is there a script here? Is that that's just the same thing? Oh, let me guess. I got bad credit as well. All of the black eye things, whatever. So, talk about more some of the storytelling side of it, because I wasn't even aware of that. I was just thinking like, oh, photography, but now hearing that sort of storytelling element and they kind of go together.
Yeah.
So talk more about that.
Yeah. So, in terms of who we cater to, the spectrum is so wide now.
Yeah.
Like, we have everyone from sex workers to great grandmothers. I have had everybody and everyone in between, from single people to couples, thruples, the gender spectrum, like they, them, everybody has come through. I've had clergy come through, government officials come through. Just on the human aspect, on the represented aspect of the amount of melanin or the weight. I've had tall, small, big, small, like everything in between. And it's been such a, again, a breath of fresh air, because no offense to my white people, but the skinny white girl pandemic on Instagram is real. And when you start introducing, and don't get me wrong, if you go through my feed right now, you'll see a lot of skinny white girls, because a lot of them are the client.
Yeah.
But I never turn down a body. Anybody who wants to come through, like oftentimes what I tell people with that feel that they're not represented on my feed, I tell them, book a session. Like that's all you have to do. Like I'm not controlling the feed. You are.
Right.
Yeah, I've had everybody and everyone in between. And you can't make everybody happy. Like some people are just like, why don't you have enough trans people? I was just like, they're in there, but I'm not going to make it like I'm not trying to make business on profiting off of someone's lifestyle. That's not what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to create a safe space.
Yeah.
So everybody can have room at the table. I don't want to make it a spectator sport and be like, this person's trans. Like
there's a spot, and I felt that. I almost bit my tongue off a second ago. There's a spot where you don't want to be fetishistic, and when some people are like, I'm only going to do this for this month, it should be baked in. It's naturally there, and as you said, you don't turn down any bodies, and I can look at it the same way of who I interview. It's just like, there's intention of when I might put an interview out, but it's very rare that I've turned anyone down. One guy was a dick, but it's very rare that I turn anyone down for an interview. And it's like, all right, cool. But also, there are a lot of people who just don't get back, that don't follow up and so on. So it's indicative of who's like coming in. It's like, it's at this point, it's probably, for me at least, probably about 50% me sourcing guests and 50% of people reaching out through referrals and so on. That's what's making it up. So when I go through that feed, and I try to be very mindful of, all right, I can't have like 6 white dudes in a row. That's just, I got to break this up. I got to, it's just a white sausage party here. Can't have that going on. And, trying to break that up or what have you, but it's about fit. It's about intention. And you're right. Everybody's got something to say. You can't make everybody happy, but you have to be very connected to what your intention is, what you aspire to do, and be accountable and responsible to yourself. And, ultimately whoever else you're working with the team and all of that good stuff. But at the end of the day, you're taking everything that comes along with it, you know? And you remember me and, firing squad. I was like, oh, that's a lot of questions I got here today with this, that creative morning. It's like, I was like, am I interested? I was like, can we get me off stage? That'd be great. Because I tell people all the time, I was like, I'm a very shy dude. And it's like, no, you're not. I was like, I assure you I am. So let's see. you talked about the, being the cathartic thing. Do you have like, and be very, if you will, be very like vague about it, but enough of like, like a story that comes out where, it's almost like this was a period I've always felt unpretty, always felt unworthy, or whatever the thing is, and being able to have that sort of bravery through the photography and through the just that whole process. That it was something that was very rewarding for them. Talk about that from the cathartic and the transformative standpoint.
Um, so it was actually a gentleman that stands out to me. I had more men during COVID actually book than ever.
Because
And
remember, we don't have feelings and all of that stuff, by
right,
the
right.
way. Yeah.
So I had homeboy come through, and I would have never known like his story if you just look at them. They had reached some fitness goals, cool. So they had body goals, and they were buff. They looked apart, like the gym dude type.
Yeah.
I was like, dude, good job. Like you put some work into this,
Your
and
muscles got muscles, bro.
yeah, yeah. I was like, good job on that. And he's like, yeah. And then he started opening up about where it came from. He was like, I used to be about 350, 400. And I said, what? He's like, yeah. And he's like, I in my youth, in my childhood, I experienced a lot of sexual trauma.
Mm.
And the only way for me to cope was to put on the weight so people could stay away from my body.
Mm.
And like it triggered so much stuff for me, even personally,
Yeah.
because I'm a survivor of all that stuff too, and just like, damn. And like this whole shoot changed, and I almost wanted to champion them. It almost felt like I was like pushing them to the top of the mountain
Yeah.
because I wanted to see them win. And like as they're disrobing and getting the next shot and getting the next shot, you can like feel it in the room. Like you feel the energy of the room of them finally feeling like they're at the top of the mountain, like they're in control of their own narrative. They're in control of the story now. And it was such a satisfying thing to do, to be witness, to bear witness to someone winning. Like
Yeah.
it's like seeing your best friend at the end of the marathon, like rip the little tape,
Yeah.
like getting through it, and it's just like, yeah, like I seen you on mile 1, and you made it to 20, like
Yeah.
finally. So that story in particular really, 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 it still shakes me still to this day because number one, we don't get a lot of men being vulnerable
Yeah.
in this industry in regards to their bodies. And two, because it was so relatable to me personally. So
Yeah.
that's one of the stories that kind of stands out to me.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, you're right that we have this thing where we have to be guarded, and it's weakness, it's this, it's that. And it's just like, going back to what I touched on. That's one of the things my girl mentioned. She's like, oh yeah, you're a big black, 300-pound black guy. You don't have any feelings. I was like, I know, right? And she's a little Bratz doll, so she's like, yeah, people care about me, to a degree because she's black. But it's like, oh yeah, they care about my feelings to a point. Whereas yours is like, ugh, get them out of here. And it's a thing, and you can't be vulnerable. But once that happens, once you're allowed sort of that space to do that, it's there's growth that comes from that. I think where we're not allowing ourselves to feel. That's the way I always attach it to feeling. And I remember talking with my therapist years and years and years ago. And we this mindfulness practice, and he was just like, feeling makes life worthwhile. Because I remember I was talking with him, and he's telling me about another patient, and being very vague about it. But tell me about another patient who she asked, "Can you help me not feel anything?" And he's like, "I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't give you that. That's you're getting rid of a piece of your humanity if you're doing that." Because when he mentioned, I was like, "Is that a thing?" Because I kind of want a little bit of that. If I can just feel less, and being able to do this, right? Initially it was just, I'm just going to have these interviews with people, ask them about their work, bing, bang, boom. But as I start to get into it, I'm like, all right, what's the story here? How can I help facilitate them sharing their story? There's something very powerful and very relatable with people sharing their story. And we talk about it so many times that everyone's a creative. Everyone should have the opportunity to do this and do that. But we don't really do that. We don't really walk in that. We do it to a point. Case in point, I always joke about it. I think I joked about it after Creative Mornings. I was like, just wait. A year from now, white girl's going to be doing my podcast. Just a little white girl, and she's going to be doing the photo shoots with you. This is going to be great. It's going to be great. But, it's like when someone asked me and they were like, you don't look like a podcaster. What does that even mean?
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's really, really what it is. It's not a bit in there. It's just like, you don't look like one. I was like, I don't know what that means. So I got two more real questions here. And then I got some rapid fire questions. I might have a robe question in here now. I think I might have to add a robe question. So in going to it, like, how do you like sort of strike that balance? Because you hear about it and, people have a lot of, I used to do two, right? Different sex ed podcasts. And some of the responses I would get, and it's like, but ultimately the people who were supposed to get it, they understood it. They were like, oh, whereas you see people trying to do that now, and it's like, this is very weird. And you would hear about some of the photography bros that they're not creating the most safe space. And, what I'm getting from you in this conversation, that you're doing the complete opposite. You're making an environment that fits, and that's just, it's just a beautiful situation. How do you strike sort of that balance when people are like on the fence initially? They hit boudoir and it's like, what you doing, bro? Tell me about that.
Yeah. It is not an illusion to me that I am a man in a female-driven industry. And it was a lot of learning and a lot of listening.
Yeah.
I think the best thing you can do, especially when you're going to be around different people, and this is just not only photography, just like everything else. If you're the other,
Mhm.
walking into a whatever predominant situation, listen, learn, then react. Listen, learn, and then react. And I think for me, that was the biggest thing, was just listening, learning, hearing people's story. I'm very, very keen now, especially about being sensitive to reading the room, figuring it out, and doing all this stuff, and taking the necessary steps too to make people feel comfortable across the entire thing. My girlfriend comes with me to all my shoots, not only for like their safety and their comfort, but also mine as well. It's taking these steps to make sure, not touching anyone when there's a wardrobe malfunction,
So
asking them, hey, can you fix that? If you can't reach back there, can my girlfriend help you fix that?
Mm-hmm.
And taking those necessary steps so that people feel comfortable. And outside of that, like everything from our hair and makeup person to the rooms physically, like it's methodically thought out. The color space, the color palette, the music that's playing in the background, the lighting that's in there when you walk inside the room, the smell that's inside the room. Yeah. All of it is in room for comfort, because we know, at least I put myself in the other side of the camera, so I know what it feels like to be the most vulnerable person in the room. So knowing that people are trusting you with their vulnerability, create the atmosphere of safety, and they are open to being vulnerable. And there's a lot of conversations too. Like I get on Zoom calls with them, hear their story, because if I don't know their story, then I don't know what I'm making. Right. Like, again, the spectrum. If the spectrum is sex work and we need to sell images, then we're approaching it differently. If it's mom who's just, been grinding and building a home for the last 3 years, hasn't put on makeup, hasn't dressed up or felt good in the last 3 years, then we know how to approach that shoot. Sure. So the more I learn about the person, where they're coming from, and the more I share about myself, the easier it is for everybody to collaboratively work together and be comfortable to actually see the story behind the image.
Well said. Well said. And I like that you broke that down, and that really puts a very fine and intentional point on it. And the closest comparison I have, it was funny. I did that shoot for Creative Mornings, and I was talking with Sean, who did the shoot, and I was like, I don't really take too many pictures. She was like, what? was like, I don't really take too many pictures. I'm not, I don't have it. And she's like, I don't know. So I think about just that added layer of vulnerability. The closest comparison that I have is going to get a massage.
Hmm.
And they're like, yeah, I think of the John Mulaney joke. It's like, yeah, dress to your degree of comfort. He's like, I put on a sweater and a coat over top of the sweater because he's like, I'm not comfortable. And I started thinking of the same thing. So I'm going in there and, you're going there for a massage and I carry a lot of tension in my back and in my shoulders. So if I'm going into a situation where I'm not feeling vulnerable, not feeling sort of like safe, the work that they're doing is going to be much harder to get that tension out. But going to a place that has sort of this therapeutic, this sort of hitting multiple of the senses. Like, wow, it smells great in here. Wow, that music is amazing. Is that whales? Is that whales doing a remix or something? You're able to get those different things that makes you not think about it. And you're just kind of doing it and being in whatever the act is, and you're more inclined to listen and take direction. So I'm a very stiff and rigid individual physically sometimes. It's like, look, it's a lot to get this to move around. And a person that's doing the massage therapist, hey, can you move your arm this way? Yeah, sure. Yeah. Because it's heavy for them to move it. Or I would imagine from a photo shoot perspective, if a person is asked to do something, or pose in a certain manner, and they're not feeling the most comfortable, that's one response. But if they're feeling super like they're feeling like just open and they're down to do it, it's like, oh yeah, can you do this? Yeah, I can go even further. I can extend even further, and that makes for a more collaborative shoot.
Yeah.
So here's the last part. In terms of describing the process of like working and that sort of plan, I wanted to go back and add a little bit. What are those steps that are there? I mean, you touched on that initial sort of call that you might have, and sort of like, who's the person, what's the story that they're kind of going for in this sort of shoot. What are some of the other things that happen? And should I bring a Gucci robe? What are we talking about here? Louis Vuitton? What kind of robe should I be wearing? Because it's robes and cloaks for 2023.
So it usually is an inquiry. Somebody either DMs me or goes straight through the website and inquires. If they go through the website, it's much easier. They just put the inquiry and they can immediately book a consultation with me and schedule their Zoom call. But if they hit me up through the DMs, we have a very brief conversation there, and I push them to the website and make sure that they fill everything out. And then we talk. We just chat. We just talk, and I hear where they're coming from and what they want from this shoot. And then I usually let them know if I'm the best fit for them or not the best fit for them. Some people just see the images and don't understand the ethos. Yeah. And they're like, but could you like retouch this? And I was like, that's where we stop. I was like, the whole thing with our brand is normalizing normal. If you have stretch marks, we're gonna celebrate them. If you have a little in the middle, we're gonna celebrate that. It's about celebrating and normalizing normal. Granted, if you wake up in the morning and a zit is where it should not be, we're gonna take care of that zit. We're gonna remove that guy because that guy's not permanent. But yeah, and walking them through there and making sure that those boundaries and parameters are also there. This is what this is. This is what this is not. This is what you should expect. This is what you should not expect. Because I've also had couples come through thinking that this was a different kind of shoot. And we've had to stop the shoot and reframe and talk to people and be like, listen, this is for composition only.
Yes. I get what you're saying. Like, oh, this is what you thought this was. Got it. Boom. Got it. So much. Not so much.
Different kind of date night. Different kind of date night.
So, and thank you for that. This has been spectacular. So in these last moments, I got some rapid fire questions for you. And yeah, don't overthink them. They're fun questions. You know how this goes. So name 2 to 3 qualities you look for like in a stunning image. Like, having a photographer, being a photographer, you have an eye, what you're looking for. What are those qualities that you look for in a quote unquote stunning image, one that really gets you?
I chase the light. I make sure that there's foreground and that there's background. Okay. Light, foreground, background.
Cats or dogs?
Cats.
what is one thing you wish you knew when you first started taking photos and like starting Naked Humans?
Being more vulnerable and understanding the human condition.
What was your first job?
Ooh, barista, Starbucks.
Nice. Lastly, name a 4-letter word that starts with the letter B.
Book.
Thank you. That's it. That's the quickest rapid fire. Everyone's like, oh, let me think about it for a second. It's like, come on, artists. Let's figure it out. So in the final moments, I want to thank you for being on this podcast and just coming aboard and being a part of this. And two, I want to invite and encourage you to tell folks where they can check out you, Naked Humans, all of that good stuff. The floor is yours.
Yeah, Naked Humans online is Naked Humans without the vowels. So NKDHMNS.com. And then we're also that on Instagram. So Instagram.com/NKDHMNS.
There you have it, folks. I want to again thank Sam from Naked Humans, and that's without the vowels. Get it right. And I'm Rob Lee, saying that there's art, culture, and some boudoir photos in and around Baltimore. You just got to look for them.